Hi friends, this is Tina and welcome to my new video. In today's video, I'm going to be doing something really exciting because we are finally going to be finishing this sketchbook that I've been working on for the longest time, it feels like. So I'm going to be painting my last spread, but I will also be talking about my sketchbook in general and just like the process of making art in it in more detail. Think of it as almost like a prequel to my upcoming sketchbook tour. And I definitely got the idea to do this kind of video from Little Star Nerd, who does the same. She really does the most beautiful art, and I will link her YouTube channel and socials down below if you want to check that out. I would highly recommend. So I'm quickly just going to say something about this painting. So my initial idea was to paint something, more meaningful and important to me, maybe like a picture of my hometown or something like that. But I really struggled with the idea in the end, and I just couldn't find any sort of like picture that I wanted to paint, and nothing really spoke to me in a way that I would have wanted to paint it. So I decided that I would end this whole sketchbook with the same kind of vibes that I've been going with the whole time. So I decided that I would just paint a random beautiful photo that I found on Unsplash, which made a lot more sense, honestly, because I've been doing that the whole time. And throughout this whole sketchbook, I've tried to work on a mindset of just painting what I feel like painting and not really thinking about it too much, or having to create a huge meaning behind all of my pieces. So yeah, I think that was a great idea, and I chose a cloudy picture, or not a cloudy picture, I would say a picture of clouds. I haven't actually painted anything like this in a little while, so I thought that it was a good idea, and I think it turned out fine. And I won't really be talking about the process more. You will just see what I'm painting and how I'm doing it, and instead I will talk to you about the sketchbook, and I'll also answer some of your questions that you left to me on Instagram in the end. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about, so let's start with it immediately. So I think overall, when I've been posting about this sketchbook, people have been most interested in this sketchbook in general. So I'll be quickly giving you a little summary of how this sketchbook works and what it is and how I've liked it. So this is a Moleskine art collection sketchbook in size large, which means that it has a little over 100 pages. I think something like 105 or 106, but some of the first and last pages are glued in this awkward way, so you cannot really open them fully. It is a 160 GSM sketchbook, and the actual size is A5. So I think the size large actually just means the page number. The pages in the sketchbook are slightly yellowish and they don't have any texture, so I would personally say that it probably works great for pens and pencils, but I would not necessarily recommend this for all paints. I would not personally even really recommend it for gouache either, except if you really are looking for that like low effort and low key experience like I was. I definitely did struggle with the paper sometimes. Like I said, it's 160 GSM, so in thickness it works fine with gouache, but I wouldn't personally use it for watercolors, as I think it would definitely have some sort of bleed through, and if not bleed through, at least you cannot really use your watercolors to their full potential, I don't think. And also I think the paper might start lifting off a little bit, because that has definitely happened to me sometimes while using gouache too. Overall, did I enjoy this sketchbook a lot? I would say that yes, but not because of the paper quality or the notebook really itself. I just really liked working in a sketchbook, but I would say that I would never ever go for 100-page sketchbook anymore. I feel like it was just way too much, and it was also really hard to work on some of the last pages, because like this side where all the paintings was so bulky, and it was hard to see things like evenly when you were painting across the middle section of the page. So all those things considered, I would definitely go for another sketchbook that has a textured paper, even just slightly textured, and works better for paint, and maybe one with like 30 or 60 pages. People have also been really curious about bleed through and how there isn't any. Usually gouache doesn't really bleed through that much. I've never really seen gouache bleeding through like a normal paper. Of course, if you're using like printer paper or like really like thin paper, if it will definitely bleed through, but for pages like these it usually doesn't. But the only type of like bleed through I've gotten is when I've just like used a lot of layers on top of layers, and then the page has gotten a little bit wet. So the page that is underneath the page that I'm currently working on has gotten a little bit wet, and then the paint that is on that page might have also gotten a little bit wet, and so that paint has transferred to the page next to it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that only happened to me once, where basically the other side of my paper got a little bit wet from the paints that I was using, and that color went to the other page as well. But usually that has been an easy fix. But if that happens to your pages completely, of course that's a bigger issue, but that has never happened to me. So I wouldn't personally be afraid of bleed through with gouache with this sketchbook. But if you're using some other medium like watercolor, I would definitely not use this for that. But overall it has been fine. People have also been asking about wrinkling, and to me, I don't really care about that. There's definitely some wrinkling, but if you use paper clips, you are not probably going to get that much of it, and it's going to be fine most of the time. But like I said, I don't really care about that in the sketchbook. This isn't meant for perfection anyway, so if there's a little bit of wrinkling, that's going to be fine for me. But I think that's enough of this sketchbook in general. If you have any more questions, leave them below and I'll try to answer you. By the way, all of my used products, the gouache and my sketchbook, are all linked in the description. And yeah, I forgot to say this in the beginning, but yes, I'm using gouache for all of my sketchbook paintings. So yeah, people have also been asking, why am I using a sketchbook for full paintings? Maybe if you are new here, you might be confused about the fact that I'm even calling this notebook a sketchbook. And I will, by the way, be answering to that as well in the upcoming question after this. So I'm using a sketchbook for paintings like these because I like the low pressure feel of just painting full paintings in a sketchbook. You know, when you're painting on a canvas or like a really expensive watercolor paper or something like that, you might always have this thought behind the piece of wanting to make something really beautiful, wanting to create a masterpiece, or wanting to create something that's worth to be maybe hang on a wall or something like that. And usually that's at least it for me. Like each and every time that I make a painting that is meant for someone else, like I'm making a gift, I always have different kind of feelings towards that painting than when I'm just painting it for myself. And I feel like if I would be painting in a canvas, I would always have a thought behind the painting that I want to make it presentable. But when I'm just painting inside a sketchbook, I've never had that thought before, and I like that. I like not having to think about what I'm going to be doing with the paintings after, because they're always inside a sketchbook. I also like the fact that it's not like my art is not just like scattered across my apartments, and I will always just have this like kind of satisfying and unique space for my art that is always just going to exist inside a sketchbook. I'm not like saying that I will never paint in any other way than in a sketchbook, but I also have never really even had the urge to paint in a canvas, and I don't think I will have in the near future either. And also about the word sketchbook. Yes, people have been really mad at me on social media for using the word sketchbook of this sketchbook, and kind of saying that I shouldn't be calling it a sketchbook because it is kind of like unfair to those people that only use their sketchbook for, you know, messy sketches, and they might be comparing their work to mine, which I absolutely understand. I do 100% understand why it's kind of problematic to say that, but I'm personally not going to really change that word. I have never really found a better word to use for what I'm doing, because in reality I am painting in a Moleskine art collection sketchbook. Like that's the name of this book that I'm making art in. And I do understand the fact that calling it a sketchbook might lead to people thinking that I'm actually meaning that I'm making sketches, because of course these are not sketches. Like I would never call these sketches. I've seen that online. Many people do talk about their notebooks that are similar to mine as sketchbooks, not because of what's inside, and rather about like the sketchbook and the notebook in general. They're rather like referring to that instead of what's inside, which makes sense to me and why I'm also calling it that. And yeah, it's just a more algorithm friendly and universal word to use. I've seen people saying that I should be using the word art book, and while I understand that as well, I've been also trying to like kind of do some research and search for that word online, and usually the most like hits that I get when I search for that word are people using that word as like an actual art book instead of a painting book. So that's why I'm using the word sketchbook, because it just works for me better. But of course, I never want anyone to compare my art to theirs, especially I don't want anyone to compare this painting book, this sketchbook, to their actual messy sketches, because I have those as well and they're only for me. Just remember that whatever it is in your actual like messy pencil sketchbook does not compare to anything others are doing, or even anything that you're doing. It should be for, or I'm not saying that it should be, but it's usually for your eyes only, and you don't have to show it to anyone, and you don't have to compare it to anything in the world, and I hope you don't. I also want to talk a little bit about the sketchbook and the process and how I feel like this whole time has been that I've been working in the sketchbook. So I started using this sketchbook in August 2021, and I had a lot of breaks in between because I just finished it in March 2023. So I had a lot of time in between that I didn't paint at all, and it was always hard to go back into painting when I had those breaks, especially when the breaks were like half a year or a couple of months. So it was definitely a hard time, like just finding the time and feeling the urge to get into the sketchbook and actually have time for myself to start painting, because starting is always hardest. But I've been really enjoying painting in the sketchbook and just seeing it fill up. I am a person who really likes like memory keeping and looking at things. Like I love looking at my old photos or my like old messages with my friends and things like that, and I'm a really sentimental person. So having a filled sketchbook with things that I've created has always felt like such a big accomplishment, and I already feel really proud of this whole sketchbook. Being able to just browse it and look at all of the pages has always felt really nice. Even when it was like just a couple of pages full, I always loved doing that. And I think that was the biggest motivator for me, because I really like always wanted to have something like that made by me. And I wanted something that I can feel really proud of. So that definitely pushed me forward and, made me actually want to finish it. So most of the questions that I got on Instagram were people asking me where I get my inspiration from. And that's always a loaded question. There's always so many answers to this, but like I live in a beautiful country that of course gives me a lot of inspiration in and of itself, like beautiful nature and just like being able to walk outside and enjoy the nature and things like that, and changing seasons. For example, like I've been really like excited about flowers starting to bloom, so I've been really enjoying painting flowers. There's so many things in nature that really inspired me, especially during the time of like spring and summer, maybe a little bit less during the winter, but like usually that really inspires me, like what I see outside, and that has always been my biggest inspiration. But if you want to hear about like actual inspiration and my references, I mostly use Unsplash reference photos. And I've been talking about this in so many of my videos already, and I know that if many of my viewers would hear like, where does she get her inspiration from, many of you would say Unsplash, but that's really it. I use a lot of Unsplash photos as references, and I almost every time use references for my paintings. I've been really struggling with creativity and inspiration lately, and I've been having a hard time painting without reference photos, so I've been fully utilizing them every time that I feel like it. I haven't felt bad about it, and it's totally fine for you to do that as well, whether you are just a beginner or a more experienced painter. That is always totally fine. And what I do with Unsplash photos is that I oftentimes have some sort of idea about what I want to paint. For example, me being really inspired by flowers, I might search for flowers or a spring flower or something like that. And when I get really beautiful pictures in the search results, I might just like them, and then a way that I really find a lot of good photos is looking at the similar photos or some sort of like recommended photos. When I tap a photo, it always shows some other images down below, and then I can also like, press one and then see a bunch of new ones and, see pictures that way, because oftentimes that's how I find them better than just searching for something. And then I always just like them, and they're always in the like section, and then I can just go to them whenever I feel like, and then I can just, scroll through them and see what I am inspired to paint. I got a lot of questions, about my general art making and my history with art, and I might do another video with that. But in this video I want to specifically talk about my sketchbook. And so many people did ask something like, how long does it take, and things like that. So I want to quickly answer a bunch of questions at once. So I usually try to finish one, the painting that I started working that day. I tried to finish it that day, but if I didn't end up finishing it in one day, it was okay. I could always, continue the other day. And usually it really depends how long a painting took me. I would say that something like one page maybe took on average 3 hours, but I also did do a couple of pages where I only spent an hour on it. But I would say that maybe 3 hours on one page would be an average. I think I spent maybe 10 hours on on one painting, and that was the max. So I would say that that's it. And yes, I will be starting a new sketchbook whenever I feel like it. I'm not going to be rushing myself. I have taken April off, at least so far, from painting, and I will probably do it like that for the rest of the month. I will be happy to go back to painting whenever I feel like it, but I want to focus on other things right now, and I don't feel like painting has to be right now the #1 priority, because I've been having that as my #1 for so long. But yeah, I will definitely start a new sketchbook, and I will make a video out of that too. But I think we are now getting to the end of this video. I think this was kind of hectic. I was all over the place when I was answering these things. There were a lot of questions that I got, but I think I will have to answer most of them in another video, because most of them were kind of general questions that I don't think I have time to answer in this video. But meanwhile, I got this painting done. I think it turned out really pretty. Definitely not super special, like I said, and nothing too interesting here, but I have to say that I really still like how it turned out. Maybe the background is a bit rough and there's some streaks, but again, I don't really care. This is my sketchbook. This is for me. It's totally fine if there's imperfections and things like that. I know I didn't talk about the process, but I tried to leave all the clips pretty low in speed if you want to try this painting out yourself, so I really hope that helps. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this, and definitely look out for my new sketchbook tour when it comes. I think I might be uploading it this Sunday. So yeah, look out for that, and I hope to see you there. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that already, and like this video and leave a cloud emoji down in the comments so I know you watched until the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!